I wanted to show you some practical application of the project in Finance 440. Right now I am logged on to my Fidelity.com account, and this is a new account for me. Western just changed its retirement plan from another company to Fidelity, and basically what they did to everybody is if we didn't choose any specific funds that we wanted our money to go to, they would look at our age and choose a Vanguard target retirement fund that was associated with the year closest to when we expected to retire. So right now, they are placing all of my retirement account money starting from a few months ago to the present into the Vanguard Target Retirement 2030 plan. That is not necessarily what I want to do. I want to choose my own investments. So I'm coming down here to view a list of funds, and your retirement account may eventually, if you have one now or when you have one, may work in a similar way, or you can apply this concept to just existing mutual funds or ETFs. So here are a list of all the different types of funds that I can invest in. And so what I will do is just choose an assortment of these funds and crunch some numbers with them. And I'm going to show you how I plan to do that. I'm not actually going to use those particular funds, but I will. I'm not going to use them for my demo, but in real life, those will be where I get my choices, because those are the only choices I have with this particular retirement plan. But where y'all could begin if you don't have a retirement plan, if you go to the course website to announcements, and you look toward the bottom, I created a link to all of Vanguard's funds, and it's a nice little, I can't think of what they're called, fund screener. So let's say that you're interested in all the different asset classes, international stocks. I don't know if I can actually make that any larger. I can make it a little larger. So maybe you're not interested in money markets. So maybe you're just interested in bond funds and let's say stock funds and let's say international funds. And let's say the minimum you have, or you don't have any more than 1,000 to invest. So I'm going to unclick the ones that are in excess of 1,000. And you're not interested in closed funds because you don't have an account, and if they're closed, you can't open an account with them. And let's say you're also not interested in actively managed funds, you're only interested in index funds. So those are the ones I've checked. And there are no funds to display based on my filter criteria. My guess is that $1,000 minimum is too low. So what I'm going to do is just up it to 3,000. And now there's an assortment of funds available for me to choose from. So what I did was choose 5 of these funds. And I mean, you could look at a total world stock index, a total bond market index, a small cap index. I'm not recommending any specific fund. That's your choice. But I chose 5 of these funds, and then I downloaded from Yahoo's finance site the adjusted close for like the past 16 years or so. I was too lazy to do dividends, although I should have done dividends. I didn't feel like popping dividends in there for such a long time period. Sometimes these funds pay dividends once every month or once a quarter, and that was just a lot of dividends, and I didn't want to do it. But you should. You can calculate your returns the same way that we calculated returns for the project. And unfortunately, let's see. Anyway, so then what I did is just calculated the annual return. So I input my equation for December of 2012. So I took 2012's closing price minus 2011 December closing price, divide it by the December 11 closing price. And I wanted to do that for every year. So the best way to do that is to copy it down. If I copy it down like this, it's going to switch to calculating a November. Whoops, it's going to do November to November as my year, and that's not what I want. I only want the return at the end of the year, every December. So to copy it, I highlighted this range and then put my cursor over that little black dot, which is called the grab handle, and I drug that down. And anytime it gave me a divide by zero error, and the reason it's doing that for this particular December is I don't have December of 95's data. I just deleted that divide by zero. And then I calculated the annual arithmetic mean on column E. And if there's a blank cell, it doesn't include that. So it does the average of the last 16 or so years for this particular fund. And then I did the standard deviation of the monthly returns for every single month over that huge long time period. And then I annualized it by multiplying by the square root of 12. So I now have my annual standard deviation and annual arithmetic mean for all 5 of these funds. I popped them into this table. And then I also need the correlation coefficients. So I popped all those monthly returns for all 5 funds into this spreadsheet and ran the correlation feature on the data analysis toolbar. So now I have all my rows and my annual means and standard deviations. So what I need to do next is open that Final Frontier spreadsheet. I need to enable my content, and then I just need to copy everything over from my mutual fund spreadsheet, just like we did for the project. So I'm copying my correlations, and I'm going to copy my arithmetic mean and standard deviations. And I am clicking paste special here. Oops, boy, I really messed it up. I'm clicking paste special values so that it copies the actual values. Now, you see it redrew my graph, and basically what Excel is doing is just choosing values for my axes based on the things I've plotted. The old data that I had in here had some really high returns and standard deviations compared to the funds that I've inputted. Whenever I redraw this Final Frontier, it'll redo my axes, and it'll look much more reasonable. So what I need to do now is plot out my Final Frontier. So I'm going to pop over. First I have to, I don't know why this is occurring, but I have to turn on my sheet tabs, and I like to turn on my horizontal and vertical scroll bars. And now I'm going to pop over to my EF tab. It has my fund information. It's looked up the lowest return fund of 6.19%, the highest return fund of 11.44%. And remember, my spreadsheet only increments the returns by 1% at a time. So it'll go 6.19%, 7.19%, 8.19%, all the way up to 11.19%. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. So go to Developer and Macros, Solver Run. Now, when I programmed my macro, I forgot to tell it to delete all this data. It doesn't actually graph it, so we're okay with that. But you can see, since I had a relatively small range of returns from low to high, it only gave me 6 possible points by which to create that final frontier. So let's pop over and look at our frontier. And you can see that it has redone the values on my axes, and now my frontiers look a lot more reasonable. But you can see right here, it's not smooth, and it should be smooth. The reason being there are only 6 points that are used to generate this frontier. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5 right there, and 6 right here. I would like more points to be used to generate this frontier, because as it is, it's only offered me 6 different weighting schemes. The first one is to put 100% in VLACX. The next one is to weight it this way. The third one is to weight it this way, and so on. And that's not very many. So what I'm going to do is actually edit my macro. So I've clicked on macros on the developer toolbar, and I'm going to go to Solver Run and edit. And there are 2 places you need to edit it. So instead of telling it to do, basically what this is telling it to do is to run the solver however many times you need in 1% increments to get from the lowest return to the highest return. Well, 1% increments is perhaps too few. So I'm going to have it do 0.001 increments, or 0.01%, or sorry, 0.1% increments. So I just added an extra 0 right there. And I also need to do the exact same thing down here, where it calculates the next return. Min return equal min return plus that amount by which you want to increment it. So I'm going to put another 0 right here and save that. And now from the EF tab, am going to run that macro again. And what it will do is just create a larger, not sure what to call this. It'll still go from the lowest return to approximately the highest return, but in smaller increments. It will take a lot longer, but it will give me a smoother red frontier. It's beeping every time it runs that. I hope y'all can't hear it. So now I have, still from the lowest return to approximately the highest return, but a much larger range of possible weighting schemes. So let's go back to our red frontier, and we can see that it's more smooth than it used to be. And this is just going to allow us to refine our weighting scheme. So now I'd like to try to figure out the optimal weighting scheme for my investments. So I'm pretending these 5 funds were some of the ones that I was allowed to choose from. I could, if I wanted to, if I were really that interested, I could put every single fund that I am offered or allowed to invest in up here and crunch all those numbers. But there's probably about 50 different funds in my Fidelity account that I can choose from, and I don't want to program it to do all 50. I don't think the difference in return that I might possibly generate is worth all that effort. So what I will do is choose 5 or 10. I'm willing to reprogram my spreadsheet to go up to 10. 5 or 10 funds that represent the general types of asset classes, and I'll do all this work for those 5 or 10. But anyway, now that I have my red frontier, I'm going to just hand draw, Oh, I can't. When I record these videos, it blocks off part of my screen and I can't actually close that now, so it's going to be there forever during the video. So I'm going to draw my line, my capital allocation line, until it's tangent to an efficient point, or point, yeah, that's right, tangent to the efficient part of the frontier, which happens at about right here. So I'm just trying to hover my cursor over that red frontier until it pops up and tells me about what the expected return and standard deviation is of that point. And I can see that it's a standard deviation of 8.29 and a return of 9.085. So now I can pop back to my efficient frontier tab, and that occurs right here. Standard deviation of 8.29, expected return of 9.09. This is the weighting scheme that I should use. I should put 76% of my money in VBLTX, nothing in VLACX, 11.62 in ENA-ESX, and 12.07 in VGSIX. So whenever you, or generally the way I see it, whenever you are told to allocate money across different investment types, you input a percentage. So if they take $500 a month from your check to deposit into these accounts, they deposit it by these percentages that you've told it. And those are the percentages that I should allocate across those different funds.